आदाब नाजरीन द कश्मीर वाला में आपका खैर मकदम है. Today we have with us Mr. Waseem Kakroo, clinical psychologist with Kashmir Lifeline, who has been in this field of psychology for more than 7 years now. We will be discussing the implications on mental health of children and adolescents due to prevalent and recurrent lockdowns in Kashmir, and what is the way forward for it. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you, Dharmaji, for inviting me for this program. I feel
Yes,
privileged.
sir. So before we start, I would like to, since we are starting, I would like to ask you the question that how has the situation, the COVID situation and the lockdown, since 2019, we have been seeing recurrent lockdowns in Kashmir. So how has that impacted child psychology in Kashmir?
Uh, um, if we look at the mental health of child and adolescent population specifically, and the implications of the lockdown since 2019, if we can count that era also, before the world was brought under lockdown, we were in lockdown already since 5th of August 2019. So it was not a normal situation. Like it was, the people had to be indoors for now almost. This is since 2019. It's now third year. I would say if we start from 19, 20, and 21, we're heading towards third year now. So being in such a situation is never normal for a human being, because we are social animals primarily. So it's our need, our biological and psychological need, to be in contact with other people, to be in contact with other people, to be in connection in those social circles, be with our friends, be with our colleagues and other people. And it was a confinement for us, being indoors since 2019. And for a human being to be indoors for such a long time is does not go unaffected for a human brain particularly, and for a child or an adolescent specifically, I would say. Because child and adolescent is such an age where your brain is still under development. It's developing, and you need a lot of social connections, a lot of grooming, a lot of emotional nurturance to shape your brain and hence your personality. So definitely it had, and it has in fact a lot of implications for a human brain, and especially for a brain of a child or an adolescent.
Like you said that these are the formative years. Yes, exactly. When children are, they have just joined primary school. These are the years that shape your social skills, confidence levels, and all of that. So the whole situation where you are locked and confined in a house can be
Yes,
even traumatizing for some people, for children. It has impacted their confidence skills, socializing skills, even
yes,
academics, right? So, what are the
exactly.
new psychological stresses or psychological problems that have emerged in past 2 3 years on the surface in Kashmir, which weren't there as much before?
I have been working in our state hospital as a child and adolescent psychologist for the past almost 2 years. Recently, I left hospital and have been now working with Kashmir Lifeline. I have seen its impact since the time we had this lockdown in Kashmir Valley, at the state hospital level, like in the hospital-based settings. I have seen how it evolved, how what new things have emerged over a period of time, especially among child and adolescent population in terms of their mental health. And I would like to basically draw your attention towards these three groups basically, that we as clinical psychologists divide the general population into. One group is of those children and adolescents who got affected in terms, because it was not a normal situation for any human being. So they got affected because they had a lot of stress to deal with, basically. So but their stress was not able to somehow kind of give them some mental health issues to deal with, basically. They had to deal with the stress itself, but it did not lead to any emergence of some mental health issue in their life, because of many reasons, being like one among them maybe strong genetics, healthy genetics. They did not have any blood relative, including their family members and other first degree blood relatives, the victim of any mental health issue before the lockdown came into the picture. So their genetics could not become responsible for them, for throwing them into some mental health issue, because so they had this advantage of having a healthy genetics to basically support them to deal with the stress created by lockdown itself. And plus maybe their home environment was healthy before lockdown came into the picture. They had a lot of healthy connections with friends, and they had a lot of social support before lockdown came into the picture. So they definitely had to face this lockdown situation, a very abnormal situation, and then a situation that we usually as human beings see once in a century. Like a pandemic is a once in a century phenomena, but this all these things could not make them mentally challenged, or could not make them mentally ill. For example, they did not have to face some mental health issue, though they felt mentally stressed because of lockdown. So this was one group. So they before these before basically the level of stress created by the lockdown started leveling down, and now we have still sub average level of normality in our life. We are not yet into that phase where we could have those pre pandemic situation in our social circles. But still, they did not face the impact of the lockdown or pandemic, because they had a lot of positives in their life before these lockdowns or pandemic came into their life, into this picture. Now there are two more groups to talk about, basically. The other group is of those children and adolescent population, of those children and adolescents, basically, who were already kind of dealing with some mental health issue, such as depression or anxiety or OCD or ADHD or autism or many other mental health issues that affect basically that affect child and adolescent population. So pandemic and this lockdown situation exacerbated basically their mental health issues, because of the problems, because of varied problems, such as they could not reach to their therapists or their psychiatrists on time. For example, they could not have medicines available to them from time to time. They could not have those social circles that would otherwise become therapeutic in normal situations. They could not avail those that social support. So it exacerbated basically their mental health issues. And then there were the third group of child and adolescent population who were not yet facing any mental health issue, but who were basically vulnerable to develop some mental health issue. For example, their closest blood relatives, one among them had, for example, depression, but this child did not have depression yet in his or her life. But this lockdown situation triggered it in this child's life or in this adolescent's life, because this child or adolescent was vulnerable to develop that depression or that anxiety or that ADHD or that, for example, OCD. And especially I would talk about OCD, for example, here, because we would listen to this message time and again that you need to take care of the contaminations around, and you need to keep your hands very clean. So usually people with OCD basically have a huge concern about contamination to begin with. Then this these constant messages about keeping your hands clean basically exacerbated the OCD. Sometimes it exacerbates OCD in those who already had it, and it may trigger OCD in those who were vulnerable to develop OCD because of their genetics, for example. So definitely it shaped mental health in different groups differently, basically.
All right. So basically, then moving on to what you have said, you've said like there are two, three different sections of people or children who have had similar and yet different kinds of implications on them. So,
Implication.
because a lot of, yes, a lot of parents would also be watching this live session. So I would want to ask you, how can they make the home environment friendly for the children, especially the children who were going to school before, and all of a sudden that whole routine has come to a pause. So how can they make it better?
Basically, it's a difficult situation for both parents as well as children to deal with. Earlier, before lockdown came into the picture, or before world had to go under lockdown because of COVID-19, or because of the political situations we were facing in 2019, like children would go to school from 10 to 4 p.m., for example, and they would be there at school for these 8 hours, for example. They would study there, they would play there, and they would take lunch there, they would interact with their friends and classmates there, and this would basically be therapeutic for them, and at the same time it would keep them away from the eyes of their parents, at least for those 8 hours during their school time, for example. And this would basically reduce the friction between child and his or her parent, for example, at home. But now when the child had to be there before the parents because of this lockdown situation, because parents as well as children were homebound because of the lockdown, so it started increasing friction between child and the parent, for example, because child would naturally not sit at one place, because it's not his job to sit at one place 24/7 or even for 1 hour, because it's his tendency or her tendency to play around, to roam around. And this usually annoys our parents, because unfortunately our parents have a different understanding. When we become adults ourselves, we feel that we should like children should not roam around, children should not play around, children should obey our commands all the time. And that basically creates a lot of friction between child and his or her parent, and that further exacerbated the frustration of parent as well as the child, for example. So if now we understand that this is a situation where our child is because of the winter vacations, our child will again be like before us, in front of our eyes. For example, if I am talking of a parent, so he will again or she will again be in front of our eyes doing a lot of things, sometimes guided by the parents, sometimes doing those things of their own. So they need basically structure, they don't need commands, basically they need guidance, they need that healthy communication, basically. They need parents need to basically elicit cooperation from the children and adolescents, not they should not be expecting obedience from the child and adolescent population. They should be expecting cooperation from them, because cooperation builds basically a lot of warmth in this relationship. Obedience always breeds fear in the minds of the child or adolescent population, because as parents, if they expect that their child or adolescent will always be obedient to their commands, and when they will not be obedient, it can create a lot of friction between the two people, like the child or adolescent and the parent. So the more the parents basically focus on how to elicit cooperation from their children, the more they can deal with this situation, basically. And to elicit cooperation from the children or adolescents, they need to understand the principles of positive parenting. Now this is the time where they should basically update their parenting practices. They might have good parenting practices, but those parenting practices are becoming obsolete with the passage of time, basically. because of the generation gap itself, because they did not have to deal with the social media thing when they were growing as children, so they did not have those uh, effects. They do not have that effect of parenting, of getting parented in social media age when they were growing as children. So they need to update their parenting practices to understand the influence of social media on the minds of child and adolescent population. Number one. Number two, they need to understand that this pandemic is not a usual phenomena. I would again say that this is once in a century phenomena. So they are facing it. Children and adolescents are facing it, but I would say that children and adolescents are at the receivers end here in this picture, because they do not have the experiences of life yet available to them. They do not have even their brain fully developed yet available to them. They do not have financial independence available to them. They do not have that emotional resilience available to them. So they are very vulnerable to develop different types of mental health issues, or at least they are very vulnerable to feel overly stressed because of this situation that COVID-19 has created for all of us, compared to the adult population, compared to the parents itself. So parents have a larger responsibility of understanding their roles and responsibilities in this COVID situation. They need to update their parenting practices on the principles of positive parenting, basically, because now usual parenting practices are not going to help them anymore. And if they feel that they do not understand what are those positive parenting practices, I would basically try to delineate a few of those positive parenting practices for them. It includes that warmth in the relationship, it includes that positive discipline in the relationship, it includes saying more yeses than nos in the relationship, it includes authoritative parenting practices, basically, where you have those where you have parenting practices on the base on the democratic lines, rather than that authoritarian type of parenting where you do not have any right to ask questions as a child or adolescent, where you can authoritative parenting practices allow you to basically ask questions, even if those questions are not valid, even if those questions are very stupid. But as parents, you should have that big heart to allow your child or adolescent to ask questions, so that you direct them and maybe connect them with the right understanding of what life is about. And then as parents, you need to basically have an attention on the child's other areas of his or her life, other than education as well. You need to teach them what are those family principles that you have, that have made you strong, for example, in your own life. What are those friendships, why are those friendships important, and how can, as parents, they need to understand how can they continue helping their child or adolescent in establishing good friendships, even if that is only online. For example, they need to understand how to help our child or adolescent to establish some good hobbies, so that it can those hobbies can help our child or adolescent to deal with the stress that is getting kind of developed because of COVID-19 situation. They can guide them how to make best use of, for example, religion, how to take care of their own self, how to maybe focus on personal growth, age appropriate. Like, depending on the age of the child or adolescent, the parents need to understand that there are other areas of life other than education that we need to take care of, and that we need to guide our child or adolescent towards, so that they can deal with this situation. Otherwise, if they focus only on education of the child, then it's going to badly affect the mental health of the child or adolescent in the years to come.
All right, sir. So basically, what you're saying is there is a need for an updated parenting, which is more softer in approach. So lastly, before concluding, I'll just ask you to shed some light on the available measures in Kashmir that a parent or a child can avail in terms of counseling, therapy, uh, performative therapies, etc., etc.
Garima ji, basically, we started this whole discussion with this notion that pandemic or lockdown situation has affected the child or adolescent population differently based on the group they are falling in. For example, if this is the group of those people who did not feel affected by the COVID, but they felt stressed by it, but it did not affect their mental health largely. So they may need some small guidances from time to time. But if we talk of the rest two groups, those who were already battling with some mental health issue, and those whose mental health issues got triggered by this situation, for example, they need the help of a team of people, including their own parents, basically, because parents are one of the major stakeholders in the mental health of child and adolescent population. So but parents themselves need the help of a team of mental health professionals, depending on the nature of the mental health issue the child or adolescent is battling with. For example, depression, OCD, ADHD, autism, and many other mental health issues are basically there that affect the mind of a child or adolescent population. So basically, they need to understand, parents need to understand that they need to approach clinical psychologists as their main help, and psychiatrists, if the severity of the mental health condition of the child and adolescent has gone very high, where counseling alone cannot help the child's mental health. They need to understand that the that clinical psychologists are the main help to deal with the mental health issues of such like their child and adolescent population. Then there are those people who are experts in autism. Then there are those people who are experts in speech therapy. Then there are those people who are experts in, for example, mental health disabilities, for example. But the main help for mental health issues such as OCD, depression, different types of anxiety disorders, bipolarity, and many other mental health issues that are commonly found in child and adolescent population. For them, they can very well approach a clinical psychologist in hospital setting or in private setting. Both options are available to them. And then there are options available to them such as Kashmir Lifeline. We serve people free of cost at our center is at Baghat, Srinagar, and we serve them free of cost. But there are many other options available to them. Those who want to have private services available to them, there are a lot of people, a lot of professionals working in Srinagar itself, who work in private. Then there is this child guidance and well-being center, the services of state mental hospital available at this at this Karan we call it Hedwun. At Hedwun, we have Child Guidance and Wellbeing Center that has been serving since 2019. Like it's again free of cost. So lot of options are available to parents. They can seek help of professionals and basically help their child and adolescent from getting affected by different types of mental health issues, so that these children and adolescents live their life like without getting affected, so that these mental health issues do not shape their personality in a different direction, and so that they make best use of their potential basically in the years to come. So it's their prime responsibility to seek help from professionals basically that are available in different settings across Kashmir and across Srinagar itself basically.
Thank you so much, sir. I'm very sure that this session was very informative for families and parents who have children at their homes who are struggling with certain issues. Thank you so much for
Yes.
joining us.
Thank you very much for like inviting me for this program, and I hope that this information will help parents to deal with the situation. Thanks a lot.
थैंक यू। तो नाज़रीन, ये थे वसीम काकरू साहब। द कश्मीर वाला के साथ जुड़ने के लिए आपका शुक्रिया।